The night I came home from surgery, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and loneliness. My surgeon said, "No stairs. No lifting. Call your family." I called my only son. He texted back, "Game just started. Watching TV." I stared at the phone until the letters blurred. I had stitches, dizziness, and a prescription bottle rattling like a warning. Outside, the porch light hummed. Inside, the clock ticked. Somewhere between the tick and the hum, I realized, if help wasn't coming, I would become the help, and change everything that made me small. The hospital discharged me just before dusk, the sky a watercolor of fading pinks and grays. My body felt like stitched fabric, patched together, tender, fragile. The nurse's voice still echoed in my mind. "No lifting, no stairs, and please, don't try to manage alone. Call your son or a family member for support." I nodded back then, because I believed I had someone waiting for me. Someone who would care. When the cab dropped me at my front door, the lemony smell of disinfectant hit me even before I unlocked it. My neighbor Pia had cleaned earlier. Bless her. The place looked perfect. Almost mocking. Orderly cushions, spotless counters, everything shining. Yet underneath the neatness, I felt the silence. I placed my hospital bag on the table with trembling hands. My phone buzzed. Relief fluttered. My son. Finally. But when I opened the message, my breath caught. Game just started. Watching TV. That was it. "No, how are you, Mom?" "No, need anything?" "Just TV." I slumped into the recliner, the stitches tugging against my skin. I pressed my hand gently against my side, whispering, "I need you." The words sounded foolish, swallowed by the ticking clock on the wall. For years I had been his constant. His cheerleader at T-ball, his tutor through algebra, his audience at every clumsy school play. I remembered the little boy scanning the bleachers for me, his smile breaking wide when he saw I was there. That memory made his absence tonight sting deeper. I typed, "Please, I can't do much. Just water, soup maybe." My thumb trembled as I hit send. The dots appeared, then disappeared. A minute later his reply flashed. "Can't. Kickoff. Later." I stared until the screen blurred. Then, as if my body were mocking me too, a dizzy wave knocked through me. The nurse's warnings repeated. Hydrate, elevate, don't strain. But what choice did I have? I looked at the empty pitcher on the counter. The kitchen seemed a mile away. Every movement pulled at my stitches, but thirst burned in my throat. I gritted my teeth, pushed against the recliner's arm, and stood. My knees shook. 1 step. 2. My hand slid along the wall. By the time I reached the counter, sweat dampened my neck. I grabbed the pitcher but couldn't reach the sink without risking a fall. I dragged a dining chair, inch by inch, and climbed just enough to balance the pitcher under the faucet. Water spilled everywhere. I laughed once. Sharp. Broken. My laugh tasted like grit. With shaking hands, I carried the half-filled pitcher back, each drop sloshing like a drumbeat against my fragile pride. As I lowered myself into the chair, I caught sight of the family photo on the mantel. His high school graduation, cap crooked, eyes mischievous. He had whispered that day, "Thanks, Mom. Couldn't have done it without you." What happened to that boy? I sipped the water slowly, the coolness easing my throat. Then hunger struck. The antibiotic instructions said, "Take with food." My stomach growled, but the fridge was bare except for half a jar of mustard and eggs I couldn't crack with one good hand. Desperation pushed me to the cabinet. I found a dusty can of soup. Tomato. My son used to love it as a child. He'd dip grilled cheese sandwiches, smile red-stained, and declare, "Best dinner ever, Mom." The memory almost made me cry. Almost. I slid the can into the microwave after struggling with the opener. The metallic pop was too loud, like a wound splitting. My body screamed at me to sit, but I forced myself to wait by the microwave, one hand pressed against my side. When it beeped, I exhaled relief. But the smell, the rich tang of tomato, made me nauseous. I pushed the bowl aside, weak with both hunger and revulsion. The doorbell rang. My heart thudded. Could it be him? Maybe he changed his mind. I staggered to the door and opened it. It wasn't him. It was Pia, holding a grocery bag. Her eyes scanned me, sharp as a doctor's. You look pale as chalk, she said, stepping in without waiting. I thought you might need this. She placed broth, crackers, ginger tea, and bananas on the counter. I blinked at her, overwhelmed. How did you know? She gave me that knowing tilt of her head. I just knew. When I admitted my son hadn't come, she didn't flinch. She only muttered, "Kids forget we're human," and helped me to the recliner. For the first time that night, I let someone else's hands steady me. As she fussed with pillows, I whispered under my breath, "If help won't come from him, maybe I'll find it elsewhere. Or maybe I'll become my own help." The thought was small, fragile, but it was there. A seed of something I didn't yet recognize. Something close to resolve. Pia stayed longer than I expected. She brewed ginger tea, humming quietly, as though she understood the silence in my house better than I did. The steam curled from the mug, carrying warmth into the cracks of the room. "You need rest," she said, setting the tea by my side. "I need my son," I blurted, surprising even myself. The words were sharp, heavy, and lodged in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Pia didn't argue, but her eyes softened. Sometimes the people we depend on most forget how to show up. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. He texted me that he's watching TV. That's all. No sorry. No, I'll come later. Just TV. Pia pursed her lips, then adjusted the blanket over me. Then you take this as a test. A test of your strength. Her kindness was both balm and salt. Because the truth was, I didn't want to be strong that night. I wanted to be cared for. I wanted to feel like someone's priority. When she finally left, promising to check in the morning, the house folded back into quiet. The ticking clock sounded louder, the shadows deeper. I held my phone again. Maybe he had changed his mind. Maybe he'd text by now. But the screen was blank. I scrolled through old photos, birthday parties, his first car, college acceptance letter. In every picture I was there, smiling, holding, cheering. Always the constant. Always the giver. Why was it so impossible for him to give back, even once? A restless energy pushed me upright. My stitches complained, but I ignored them. I limped to the kitchen and found Pia's groceries. Broth, crackers, tea. Enough to get by. Enough to remind me someone cared. As I ate, my mind spiraled backward. To the years I'd covered his mistakes, paid his fines, cooked at midnight, stayed up with him through breakups and exams. I carried him like a second heartbeat. And tonight, when my own heart and body begged for help, he chose a game over me. I laughed bitterly. Kickoff. That single word was heavier than the surgery itself. Pain pulsed through me, but another kind of ache dug deeper, the ache of betrayal. I sank back into the recliner, the broth unfinished, and thought about boundaries. I'd written that word down earlier, half aware. Now it glowed in my head like a neon sign. Maybe I'd been too available. Too forgiving. Maybe I'd trained him to believe my needs were optional. The thought both hurt and liberated me. The night stretched long. I dozed and woke, the pain and silence wrapping me like twin blankets. At one point, I dreamed of him as a boy again, running to me after falling on the playground. "Mom, help." And I did every single time. When I woke, my phone buzzed. My heart leapt. It was him. Finally. "How you doing?" Game was crazy. No apology. No recognition of what I'd gone through alone. Just chatter about a game. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. I could reply with the truth. Tell him I struggled for water, that Pia fed me, that my stitches throbbed because he wasn't here. But something inside me hardened. I typed back only, "I'm fine. Rest now." I set the phone aside, pulled the blanket over me, and whispered to the dark, "I'm not fine. But I will be." And with that, a strange peace settled. Not comfort, not healing, but clarity. The storm of disappointment had carved something new inside me. A space where I could finally stop expecting him to fill the role of caretaker. That space felt painful, yes. But it also felt like the beginning of freedom. Morning light filtered through the blinds, thin and pale. My body ached, but it was the ache of survival, not defeat. I made it through the night. I shuffled to the kitchen, poured tea from Pia's stash, and let the steam wash over my face. Each sip steadied me, reminding me I wasn't helpless, even if I had been abandoned. The phone buzzed again. My son. Heading out with friends. Won't be around today. You good. The casual cruelty of it nearly knocked me over. You good. As if wellness could be measured in emojis. As if surgery, stitches, dizziness could be shrugged off like an old coat. For a moment, anger burned hot. Then, unexpectedly, it cooled into something sharper. Clarity. I typed, deleted, retyped. My thumbs shook. At last I wrote, "Yes, I'm good. Take care." I didn't mean it, but I needed the words, for myself. After sending it, I placed the phone face down and decided, today, I would rely on me. The hours passed in small victories. Heating broth. Walking the hallway. Resting when I needed. Each task, though painful, felt like a rebellion against dependence. Around noon, Pia knocked again, carrying fresh bread and a sympathetic smile. She helped me to the porch where sunlight warmed my skin. "You're tougher than you look," she said. I smiled faintly. "Or more desperate." We sat quietly, the hum of traffic a distant song. Then she asked, "Are you going to tell him how much this hurt?" I shook my head. I've told him in 100 ways over the years. What I need, what I hope for. He hears only what fits his world. And right now, his world is a TV screen. Pia sighed. "Then you'll have to build your own." Her words struck like truth. Build my own world. One where my value wasn't measured by his attention. One where I wasn't left thirsty after surgery while he cheered touchdowns. When she left, I journaled. Pages filled with memories. Both tender and bitter. Times he hugged me tight. Times he ignored my calls. A full picture. Not just the wound of last night. As I wrote, I realized, love doesn't disappear because it's unreturned. But love can shift. Love can stop bending until it breaks. That evening, I stood at the window watching kids ride bikes down the street. Their laughter floated upward, bright against the falling dusk. I pressed a hand to my healing side and whispered, "I'll be okay." My phone buzzed one last time that day. Sorry if I couldn't come. Game was important. I'll swing by later this week. I stared at the words. Not anger this time. Just a hollow acceptance. I typed nothing back. For once, silence was my answer. Because sometimes the strongest thing isn't begging someone to come. It's learning you can stand without them. And as night drew in, I realized, I wasn't just surviving surgery. I was surviving disappointment, and beginning to grow past it. The next morning arrived heavy with silence, broken only by the rattle of a passing garbage truck. My body throbbed from the stitches, each step a reminder of how fragile I had become. Still, something inside me hardened overnight. I poured ginger tea into a chipped mug and leaned against the counter. The phone buzzed. My son again. For a heartbeat, hope flickered. Maybe this time he understood. "Morning, Mom. Big day today. Meeting the guys for brunch, then back to the game." "You good?" That phrase again. "You good?" The casual cruelty stung more than my surgical wound. It wasn't a question. It was a dismissal disguised as concern. I didn't answer. Instead, I placed the phone face down and listened to the quiet. In that quiet, I felt both abandoned and strangely free. If he wouldn't come, then maybe I no longer needed to beg. I shuffled into the living room, the family photos staring back like silent witnesses. In one, he was 5 years old, frosting smeared across his face, looking at me as though I was his entire world. Another showed him at 16, arms slung carelessly over my shoulder, unaware of how much I'd sacrificed to keep his life steady. What would that little boy think of the man who now chose a TV screen over his mother's pain? The thought burned, but it also fueled me. By noon, Pia arrived again, carrying a bag of fresh groceries. Her knock was gentle but firm. "You up?" she asked as she stepped inside. "I'm surviving," I muttered. She eyed the untouched soup, the half-empty water pitcher, and sighed. "Surviving isn't enough. You need help." I wanted to argue, but instead I asked, "How do you stop expecting from someone you've spent your whole life giving to?" Pia paused. "You don't stop overnight. You start small. Expect less today than yesterday. And eventually you'll expect nothing, and that's when you're free." Her words cut, but they also settled like seeds. That afternoon, while Pia fussed with laundry and made me toast, I drifted into a haze of memories. The night shifts I worked to pay his tuition. The lunches packed in brown bags with notes that said, "You've got this." The countless times I cheered from the sidelines. All those investments, and tonight, the return was silence. The phone buzzed again. Against my better judgment, I looked. Crazy win last night. You should have seen it. Everyone's talking about it. I stared until the letters blurred. Everyone was talking about the game. But no one was talking about me, about the surgery, the struggle, the fear of being alone in a house that once held love. A sob rose, sharp and sudden, but I swallowed it. Crying wouldn't change him. Crying wouldn't stitch me whole. So I opened my journal instead. Each word I wrote bled both pain and power. I needed him. He didn't come. I survived alone. This isn't the end of me. It's the start of something else. As the pen scratched, something shifted. I realized this wasn't just about a night after surgery. It was about a lifetime of imbalance, of giving too much and receiving too little. By evening, Pia returned with a casserole and insisted on eating with me at the table. The simple act of clinking forks, of sharing silence, felt like a rescue. "You're not alone," she said. But when she left, the shadows returned. I climbed into bed slowly, each step deliberate. My body was weak, but my mind churned with clarity. If I couldn't rely on my son, I would learn to rely on myself. Before drifting to sleep, I whispered into the dark, "I raised him to be everything. But maybe it's time I raised myself too." The next day dawned with a strange clarity. My body still ached, but my spirit, though battered, was beginning to push against the walls I had built around myself for years. I sat at the kitchen table, Pia's casserole half-eaten before me. Sunlight crept across the surface, highlighting crumbs, empty pill bottles, and the folded discharge papers the nurse had handed me. At the bottom of those papers was a line in bold, "Patient advised to avoid stress." I laughed bitterly. Avoid stress. As if stress were a light switch I could flip off. My phone buzzed again. His name. My son. For a moment, my chest tightened with hope. Maybe he'd realized. Maybe guilt finally pricked his conscience. But when I opened the message, the breath left me. "Hey Mom, can you send me a little cash? Cover's tight this week. I'll pay you back after Friday." Not a word about surgery. Not a word about the night I nearly fainted climbing to the sink for water. Just money. Always money. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I had given him so much already. Down payments, tuition, bailouts, bills. My life had been a series of sacrifices. And now, when I could barely stand, he still saw me only as a wallet. I typed, then erased. My fingers trembled. "I needed you last night." I wrote it, stared at it, then deleted it. He wouldn't hear it. He never did. Instead, I closed the phone and let the silence ring louder than any reply. The anger came next. Hot. Bitter. Alive. I slammed the casserole dish into the sink harder than I meant to, the sound clattering through the house like thunder. I pressed my palms against the counter, my breath ragged. Why was I begging for scraps of attention from someone I had given everything to? Why did I let his absence define my worth? Pia knocked later that afternoon. She found me pacing slowly, clutching my side. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she said, her eyes narrowing as she guided me to the recliner. "I'm tired, Pia," I admitted. "Not just from surgery. From all of it. From being invisible." She sat across from me, her gaze steady. "Then stop being invisible. Make him see you, or stop waiting for him to." Her words lit a fire in me. That evening, I sat with my journal again. This time, I didn't just write memories. I wrote a plan. Step 1. Heal my body without his help. Step 2. Protect my heart from more disappointment. Step 3. Decide what I will no longer tolerate. Each line steadied me. Each line was a declaration. The phone buzzed again. His name. "Did you send it yet?" "Need it before tonight." My hands shook. Not from weakness this time, but from fury. I typed back slowly, each word deliberate. "I just had surgery. I needed you. You weren't there. No, I won't send money." For the first time in years, I hit send without fear. Seconds later, the phone lit up with his call. The screen glowed like a siren. My pulse quickened. For a moment, I considered answering, listening to excuses, absorbing blame, softening like I always did. But I didn't. I let it ring. And ring. Until it stopped. Silence followed. I leaned back in the chair, a strange mixture of grief and triumph washing over me. My body was weak, but my spine felt straighter. Later that night, Pia brought over candles. We sat in the dim glow, the house smelling faintly of ginger and wax. I told her about the message, the money, the anger. "You finally told him no?" she asked, almost in disbelief. "I did." My voice cracked, but there was steel beneath it. Pia reached across the table, squeezed my hand. "Then maybe this surgery wasn't just on your body. Maybe it was on your soul too." Her words sank deep. Surgery cut to heal. Maybe this pain, the loneliness, the betrayal, the refusal, was the first cut toward healing something much bigger. When I went to bed that night, my body groaned with exhaustion, but my heart carried a spark it hadn't felt in years. I whispered to myself, not to him. "No more begging. No more waiting. From now on I rise. Even if it's alone." The darkness answered only with silence. But for the first time, that silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like space. Space I could finally claim as my own. The knock came at 8 p.m. sharp. 3 firm raps, like a gavel striking wood. I sat in the recliner, blanket draped across my lap, body sore but steady. My heart pounded, not from weakness this time, but from anticipation. I knew who it was before I even rose. I opened the door to find him, my son, standing there in a hoodie, hands stuffed in his pockets, expression carefully blank. He looked past me into the house, like he was walking into a courtroom he didn't respect. "Mom," he said flatly. "You didn't answer my calls." I held the door wide. "Come in." He stepped inside, his sneakers squeaking on the polished floor Pia had scrubbed days ago. He didn't hug me. Didn't ask how the surgery went. Instead, he dropped onto the couch, grabbed the TV remote, and flicked through channels like he owned the place. I lowered myself into the recliner across from him. The silence was thick. "You look tired," he said at last, not meeting my eyes. "Anyway, I need to talk to you about that money." There it was. Straight to business. No pretense. I leaned forward, my hand resting on the stack of hospital papers beside me. "Before we talk about money, let's talk about last night." He shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, don't start. The game was important." Important. My voice cracked like a whip. I had stitches tearing inside me, dizzy from blood loss, and you told me kickoff was more important? His jaw tightened. "You're exaggerating." I slammed the papers on the table. "Read them." Post-op instructions. No stairs. No lifting. Patient must not be left alone. You left me alone anyway. Do you call that exaggerating or negligence? He stared at the TV, pretending interest in a commercial. "You're being dramatic." I texted. "I asked if you were good." "You good." I repeated, the words tasting like poison. "That's not care. That's not presence. That's a formality to make yourself feel better." He finally looked at me, irritation flashing. "Why are you attacking me?" "I came tonight, didn't I?" "You came tonight because you want money," I shot back. "Not because you care whether I can walk from this chair to the kitchen without collapsing." The words hung in the air, sharp as verdicts. His face hardened. "You don't understand. I've got bills, Mom. Real responsibilities. My friends rely on me. You act like I'm some villain because I didn't drop everything for you." I sat straighter, my voice low, controlled, like cross-examination. "Let's review the evidence. Exhibit A. I raised you alone. Worked double shifts so you could eat, study, and dream. Exhibit B. I covered your college loans when you gambled away your scholarship. Exhibit C. Every time you stumbled, I was there, no questions asked. And now, when I finally needed you, where were you?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, he had no rebuttal. I pressed on. "This isn't about one night. This is about a lifetime of me carrying you, and you never learning to stand for me. You've mistaken my love for an endless obligation. He bristled. Defensive. You're twisting this. I'm your son. Family helps family. Family helps family, I repeated slowly, letting each word strike. Then why didn't you help me? The room went still. Even the TV seemed to hush. Finally, he muttered, I didn't think it was that serious. My laugh was bitter. Stitches. Dizziness. Discharge order saying, no stairs. What part of that didn't sound serious to you? His voice rose. Because you always handle everything. You're unbreakable. I thought you'd be fine. Unbreakable. I leaned forward, gripping the chair's arm. Do you know what it cost me to look unbreakable? Every sacrifice, every tear I swallowed, every dream I buried, so you could feel safe. And now you use that strength as your excuse to abandon me? He looked away, ashamed or unwilling to meet my fury. I pointed to the door. If you can't face the truth, there's the exit. He stood abruptly, anger flaring. Fine. If this is how you're gonna be, don't expect me to come around anymore. Don't call me when you need help. Don't ask me for anything. I rose too, my body trembling but my voice like steel. I won't. Because I finally see the truth. Asking you is asking for disappointment. The air between us was electric, like thunder about to split the sky. He grabbed his hoodie tighter. You're unbelievable. No, I said calmly though my chest heaved. For the first time, I'm believable. I'm speaking facts. And the fact is, you failed me when it mattered most. For a long moment, neither of us moved. It was a standoff, verdict already delivered. Finally, he stormed toward the door. At the threshold, he paused. For the briefest second, I thought he might turn back, apologize, soften. But instead he spat. You'll regret this. And then he was gone. The slam of the door echoed like a gavel, final and cold. I sank back into the recliner, my stitches screaming from the confrontation. My body trembled, not just from pain, but from the release of years of swallowed resentment. Tears welled, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Instead, I whispered to the empty room. Regret? The only regret is how long I let him believe love meant servitude. The clock ticked, steady and impartial, like a jury foreman confirming the verdict. For the first time in decades, I had cross-examined my own life. And the evidence was clear. I had been both judge and prisoner. But tonight, with his absence ringing louder than his presence ever had, I finally unlocked the cell. And though I collapsed into sleep from exhaustion, my last thought was this: the trial isn't over. The next witness is me. And I will testify for myself. The house was quiet after he stormed out, but the silence was not the same as before. Before, silence had been abandonment. Now, silence was evidence. It proved what I already knew but had been too afraid to admit. My son loved comfort more than he loved responsibility. I spent the next morning with Pia, who arrived armed with fresh fruit and firm advice. She fussed with the blinds, the kettle, the blankets, until finally she sat across from me, eyes sharp. You stood up to him, she said. You finally said no. Her words replayed the confrontation in my head like trial footage. His face, twisted in defensiveness. My words, sharp as cross-examination. His threats of, you'll regret this. The slam of the door like a final judgment. Yes, I whispered, voice rough. I said no. And it nearly tore me apart. Pia's expression softened. That's because it wasn't just one no. It was 1,000 unsaid no's, stacked into one moment. Her words pierced me. That night, unable to sleep, I reached for my journal. The pen trembled in my hand, but I wrote anyway. Each word was a testimony, a deposition of my life. I worked double shifts while he slept in warm beds. I canceled vacations so he could join summer camps. I paid off his speeding tickets while eating ramen noodles for dinner. I wore the same winter coat for 10 years so he could have the latest sneakers. The ink smeared under my tears. Each line was a piece of evidence, building a case against the woman I had been, self-sacrificing to the point of invisibility. When dawn came, I read the words aloud to the empty room. They sounded like closing arguments in a courtroom where I was both plaintiff and defendant. Exhibit A, I said into the silence. My life's sacrifices. Exhibit B, His absence when I needed him most. Exhibit C. My realization that love without reciprocity is not love, but servitude. For the first time, I felt something stronger than grief, resolve. Later that day, my phone buzzed. His name lit the screen again. I hesitated, then answered. Mom. His voice was clipped, annoyed. Why didn't you send the money? You know I needed it. I inhaled slowly. I just had surgery. I needed you. You didn't come. A pause, then laughter. Disbelieving, sharp. You're guilt-tripping me now? After everything I've done for you? The words hit me like a slap. Everything you've done for me? I repeated, incredulous. Tell me, what exactly have you done for me? The silence on the other end was deafening. I'll tell you what you've done, I pressed on, my voice hardening. You've taken. You've expected. You've leaned on me like I was a crutch that never broke. But when I needed a single hand, just one, you gave me excuses and a TV remote. His breath crackled through the line. Uneven. You're selfish, he spat. Selfish. My laugh was bitter. Selfish is asking your post-surgery mother for money instead of asking if she can walk to the bathroom without collapsing. Selfish is watching a game while she crawls to the sink for water. He cursed under his breath. Forget it. If this is who you are now, I don't need this. And then the line went dead. I stared at the silent phone, tears pricking but not falling. For years those words, "You're selfish," would have shattered me. But tonight, they sounded hollow. The accusation was projection, not truth. I whispered to the still air. I am not selfish. I am finally learning to save myself. And with that, the gavel of my heart struck again. Another verdict rendered. The week dragged, each day a mix of slow healing and sharper clarity. Pia checked in daily, bringing soup and laughter. She became my unexpected co-counsel, reminding me of my worth when my mind wavered. By Thursday, I managed to walk the block with her, each step painful but victorious. Neighbors waved. The sun warmed my skin. For a fleeting moment, I felt alive, not just surviving surgery, but surviving years of being overlooked. That evening, just as Pia was leaving, a car screeched into the driveway. My son climbed out, flanked by two friends. Their voices were loud, careless, dripping with entitlement. Yo, Mom, he called, striding to the porch without knocking. Got company. Thought we'd crash here, grab some food, maybe hang. The audacity made Pia freeze beside me. I stood, steadying myself against the doorframe. You thought wrong, I said, voice steady. He blinked. What? This isn't a hotel. And I am not your maid. His friends exchanged awkward glances. One muttered, maybe we should, but he waved them quiet. Mom, stop embarrassing me, he hissed, eyes narrowing. Just make something. We'll chill, watch the game. The game, I repeated, the words dripping with disdain. The same game that was more important than your mother's surgery? His face flushed red. Not here, Mom, he warned, voice low. But I didn't lower mine. For years, I had silenced myself to keep peace. Tonight, I spoke with the volume of justice. No, I said firmly. Here. Right here. In front of your friends. They should know who you really are. The son who left his mother dizzy and bleeding after surgery because a kickoff mattered more. The son who texts for money while she struggles to stand. His friends shifted, uncomfortable. One muttered, Man, let's go. But I wasn't finished. My voice rose, sharp as a verdict. I gave you everything. Years of sacrifice. My health. My dreams. And in return? You gave me excuses, neglect, and shame. Well, no more. This house is mine. My peace is mine. And from this day forward, my life is mine. He stared at me, stunned, his friends already edging toward the car. His lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. For once, the courtroom was silent, the jury watching, the verdict undeniable. Finally he spat. You'll regret this. But his voice cracked. His friends dragged him toward the car, muttering apologies to me as they went. The engine roared, tires squealed, and then they were gone. The house settled back into quiet, but this time the quiet wasn't empty. It was victorious. Pia turned to me, eyes wide. You, she breathed. You just demolished him. I exhaled slowly, my body trembling but my spirit steady. No, I said softly. I didn't demolish him. I freed myself. The clock ticked, impartial as ever, but for the first time, the sound didn't mock me. It applauded. I stood taller than my stitches allowed and whispered into the silence. The trial is over. And I finally won. The house felt lighter after the confrontation, but wounds, both physical and emotional, don't heal overnight. I still moved carefully, each step tugging at stitches, but something inside me had shifted. For the first time in years, I was no longer crawling under the weight of his demands. The morning after he stormed away with his friends, I brewed tea and sat at the kitchen table with my journal. Outside, the world buzzed with ordinary life. Birds darting across fences, children's laughter skipping down sidewalks, the rumble of a delivery truck. Inside, it was just me and the truth I could no longer avoid. I wrote, I spent decades building his world, but he never cared to build mine. The words cut, but they also clarified. Pia stopped by mid-morning with a basket of laundry she insisted on folding for me. You look different, she said, her eyes scanning my face. Different how? Like someone who just stepped out of prison. Her words struck me. Maybe I did, I said softly. That afternoon, the phone buzzed. His name again. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mom, his voice rushed tense. Listen about last night. I cut in, voice calm but firm. Which part? The part where you barged in with your friends, or the part where you expected me to cook for you days after surgery? He groaned. Don't twist this. I was just trying to. No, I interrupted, sharper now. You weren't trying to help. You were trying to use me. Again. Silence. Then he muttered, You've changed. I've remembered my worth, I corrected. His sigh crackled through the line. So what, you're cutting me off? After everything? I let out a bitter laugh. After everything? I was the one who gave everything. And you took. Now I'm done being your endless resource. The silence stretched, heavy as a verdict. Then his voice rose, sharp. You're making me the bad guy. I answered like a lawyer delivering final arguments. You made yourself the bad guy the moment you chose a game over your mother's pain. I just stopped hiding the evidence. He hung up. The call left me shaking, but strangely relieved. For years, I'd avoided confrontation, terrified of driving him away. But he was already away, emotionally gone long before last night. That evening, I sat with Pia on the porch. She poured tea, her eyes kind. What now? She asked. Now, I said slowly. I stop waiting for a son who isn't coming. And I start building a life where my worth isn't measured by his attention. Pia smiled faintly. Then let me be the first witness to this new trial. I laughed, weak but genuine. The days that followed were a blur of slow healing. I managed small walks, short meals, and quiet journaling. My body was tender, but my spirit grew sharper. Each entry in my journal was another piece of testimony. I am not selfish. I am reclaiming. I am not abandoned. I am awakening. I am not weak. I am wounded, and wounds heal. Then, on the fifth night, I received another text. Mom, I need to come over. Alone. Just us. Please. The words looked different. Softer. Almost sincere. For a moment, my chest ached with hope. But then I remembered the last decade, the excuses, the neglect, the manipulation. Was this another performance? Another tactic to get what he wanted? I typed back, if you come with honesty. Not demands. No reply came. The silence that followed was not emptiness. It was control. For once, I held the gavel. As I went to bed, my stitches aching but my mind clear, I whispered into the dark, this is not the end. This is the testimony before the final judgment. And I knew the trial between us was far from over. The following evening, he arrived without warning. No friends, no bravado, no slammed doors. Just him, standing on the porch in the fading light, shoulders slumped, eyes shadowed. For a moment, I didn't recognize him. I opened the door slowly, my body still sore but my stance steady. Why are you here? His voice cracked. To talk. I hesitated, then let him in. He sat on the edge of the couch like a defendant waiting for cross-examination. Mom, he began, rubbing his palms together. I screwed up. The words were quiet, almost inaudible. I folded my arms. Be specific. His gaze dropped. The night of your surgery. The texts. Bringing my friends over. I wasn't there for you. Finally, an admission. My heart ached, but I held my voice firm. Not being there is an understatement. I begged for help, and you chose football. Do you understand what that felt like? His jaw tightened. I thought you'd be fine. You always are. There it was again. The myth of my invincibility. I leaned forward. That belief is your crutch. My strength has never meant I don't bleed. It has meant I bled silently so you wouldn't see. But this time I couldn't hide it. He winced. I know. And I'm sorry. I really am. But I also need help. With money. With my life. The courtroom inside me roared alive. So this is your defense? You confess to neglect and immediately present another request. He shook his head quickly. No, not like that. I'm drowning, Mom. His eyes glistened. And I don't know how to fix it. 4 years those words would have undone me. I would have rushed to patch his holes, to sacrifice again. But now, I inhaled deeply and chose truth. You fix it, I said, by standing on your own feet. The same way I always did. His lips parted, stunned. So you won't help? I will guide. I will listen. But I will not bankroll irresponsibility anymore. The silence stretched. Finally, he nodded. Slow. Reluctant. Okay. I hear you. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't redemption. But it was a crack in the armor. A moment of honesty. When he left that night, the air between us felt fragile, like glass placed on a narrow shelf. But for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. Because the testimony had been heard. And the verdict, though unfinished, was leaning in my favor. The next few days unfolded like uneasy negotiations. He called once, twice, 3 times. Not with demands, but with attempts at conversation. Each call was shorter than the last. Yet something in his tone shifted. Less arrogance. More searching. But trust, once shattered, doesn't rebuild on words alone. On the 4th evening, he came again. Alone, cautious. As if walking into a courtroom where the judge had already seen through every excuse. I let him in, moving carefully, my stitches still tender. Pia sat with me this time, arms crossed, her presence like a second witness. He shifted under her gaze. I came to apologize, he said, voice low. I leaned forward, hands clasped. Then do it properly. State the facts. His eyes flicked between us. I ignored you when you needed me most. I put my wants before your health. I treated you like an option, not a priority. And I brought friends here like it was my place, not yours. The confession struck deeper than I expected. 4 years, I had longed for acknowledgement. Now it came, raw and trembling. But apology without accountability is only half a plea. And why, I asked. Did you think that was acceptable? He swallowed hard. Because you always covered for me. Always fixed things. I thought you'd forgive me like you always did. The honesty stung, but it was the truth I needed to hear. Pia spoke then, her voice cutting. Do you know what it cost her to be unbreakable for you? Do you know the years she gave up, the pain she hid, the sacrifices you never saw? He flinched, shame flickering in his eyes. I didn't realize. I nodded slowly. That's the problem. You never realized. And I never forced you to. Until now. He looked at me then, really looked. His face wasn't defiant or defensive. It was the face of a boy stripped of excuses, standing exposed before the truth. What do I do? He whispered. I exhaled. You grow up. You stop expecting me to carry you. You face your debts, your failures, your laziness. And you learn that love isn't measured in handouts. It's measured in showing up when it matters. Tears rimmed his eyes. He nodded once, then again. I'll try. Pia rose, gathering her bag. Good. Because if you don't, She won't be waiting anymore. Her words sealed the moment like a closing argument. After she left, he lingered. The silence between us was no longer hostile, but fragile, delicate. "Mom," he said softly, "do you hate me?" The question cut deeper than any neglect. My throat tightened. "No," I said finally. "I don't hate you. But I hate what you chose. And I won't let you choose it again at my expense." He nodded slowly. For once, no excuses followed. No demands. Just silence that felt like the beginning of accountability. When he left that night, I sat in the recliner, tears spilling freely. Not of grief, but of release. For the first time, the testimony had been given, the truth recorded, and the gavel of my soul struck final. The trial wasn't over. But for once, the jury inside me leaned toward hope. The following week unfolded like a long cross-examination. Each day tested both my resolve and his sincerity. He texted small things, "How are you feeling?" or "Need groceries?" Simple questions, ordinary gestures, yet for me they felt monumental, because for once they weren't demands. But trust, I knew, wasn't rebuilt in polite phrases. It required action. Evidence. Proof. On Tuesday evening, the evidence was delivered. He showed up unannounced, but this time he didn't arrive empty-handed. In his arms was a bag of groceries. Basic things. Bread, eggs, milk, tea. Ordinary, yes, but the act carried weight heavier than gold. "I thought you might need these," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. I accepted the bag, my hands trembling. Not from weakness but from the strange reversal. "Thank you," I said quietly. We cooked together. If microwaving soup and buttering bread could be called cooking. The silence between us wasn't hostile, but it was tense, like the air of a courtroom where both sides are waiting for the verdict. Halfway through the meal, he finally spoke. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said, about all the times I leaned on you." I put down my spoon, bracing. "And?" His eyes were heavy with guilt. "You were right. I treated you like a safety net instead of a mother. And I don't want to be that son anymore." The words cracked something inside me. For years, I had begged for recognition, acknowledgement, anything that showed he saw me as more than a convenience. And here it was. But still my guard rose. Words are easy. Actions are evidence. And without evidence, words mean nothing. He nodded, surprisingly without defensiveness. "Then I'll prove it." The conversation ended there, fragile but promising. Yet as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the unease. Promises had been made before. Trust had been broken before. Could I risk believing again? The next day brought a different kind of test. He texted mid-afternoon, "Need a ride to your follow-up appointment?" The question shocked me. For the first time in years, he was offering before I had to beg. I replied simply, "Yes." The following morning, he drove me to the clinic. The drive was quiet, almost awkward, but his hand hovered near the gearshift like he wanted to say something more. At the clinic, he waited with me, scrolling his phone but not leaving. When my name was called, he stood too, as though bracing to catch me if I stumbled. For the first time in months, I felt less alone. But later that evening, Pia came over and found me unsettled. "He's trying," she said, pouring tea. "Isn't that what you wanted?" "Yes," I admitted. "But what if it's temporary? What if it's guilt, not change?" Pia set down her cup. "Then let him prove it. A courtroom doesn't close after one witness. Evidence comes piece by piece. Collect it. Evaluate it. And when the case is clear, then you decide." Her words soothed me. She was right. This wasn't about rushing to forgive or holding endless grudges. It was about watching, waiting, weighing the evidence of his actions. That night, I wrote in my journal, "He is trying. I am watching. The trial continues." And for once, the idea didn't exhaust me. It steadied me. The shift continued slowly, like dawn breaking through heavy clouds. My son texted more often, visited occasionally, even brought groceries twice. Small gestures, yes, but consistent. One Sunday afternoon, he arrived with something unexpected. A folder. He placed it on the table and pushed it toward me. "What's this?" I asked. "Proof," he said simply. Inside were receipts, payments he'd made on overdue bills, a budget he had scribbled together, job applications he'd submitted. His handwriting was messy, his numbers clumsy, but the intent was clear. "I'm trying to get my act together," he said, voice low. "Like you told me. Standing on my own feet." My throat tightened. "Why show me this?" "Because I want you to see I heard you. That I'm not just saying things. I'm doing them." The words struck deep. For years, I had begged him to grow up, to take responsibility, to stop leaning on me. And now, here he was, offering evidence unprompted. Still, the defense attorney inside me pressed on. "And what happens when it gets hard? When the money runs out or the pressure builds? Do you run back here, expecting me to clean it up again?" He shook his head firmly. "No. Not anymore." The conviction in his voice startled me. For once, he didn't sound like a boy making excuses. He sounded like a man making vows. But trust, I reminded myself, isn't restored in a single gesture. That evening, Pia came by and found me staring at the folder. I told her what happened. She smiled knowingly. "That's evidence," she said. "File it away. Build the case. And one day, you'll know if the verdict is redemption or just another performance." I laughed softly. "You should have been a lawyer." "Maybe," she said, winking. "But for now, I'll be your witness." That night, lying in bed, I replayed his words. "I'm trying. I want you to see it." I whispered to the doc, "Maybe this trial has more than one ending." 2 weeks later, the confrontation came. Not with my son, but with myself. I stood before the bathroom mirror, staring at the woman reflected back. Pale skin, tired eyes, stitches still healing. But beneath the fragility, I saw something else. Steel. For decades, I had defined myself as his mother, his safety net, his shield. Every sacrifice, every decision, every wound had been shaped around him. But who was I without that role? The question haunted me. That evening, my son arrived again. This time alone, no folder, no groceries. Just him, looking oddly nervous. "I got a job," he blurted as soon as he entered. "Part-time for now, but it's something." I nodded slowly. "That's good." He shifted, hands fidgeting. "And I wanted to say thank you. For everything you did. For not giving up on me, even when you should have." The words hit like a verdict delivered after years of trial. Gratitude. Recognition. Finally. But instead of relief, I felt a strange emptiness. Because while his growth mattered, I realized my life couldn't only revolve around waiting for his transformation. I needed my own verdict. "Son," I said carefully, "I'm glad you're trying. Truly. But I also need to try. To live my own life. To stop defining myself only by your choices." He blinked, stunned. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said firmly, "that I am more than your mother. I am a woman who deserves joy, peace, and purpose outside of you. And starting now, I will find it." His lips parted, as if to protest, but no words came. He simply nodded slowly, realization dawning. That night, after he left, Pia sat with me on the porch. The stars glimmered above, quiet and eternal. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I corrected gently. "I'm doing it. The trial isn't over, but for once, I'm not just the witness or the victim. I'm the judge. And the verdict is my life, finally mine." I leaned back, stitches aching but spirit soaring, and whispered to the night, "Case closed." The air in the house had changed. Not lighter, not heavier. Simply different, like the courtroom after a shocking testimony. The witnesses have gasped, the jury has shifted, and the judge has called for order. That's where I stood, in the pause before the final verdict. My son had taken small steps forward. Apologies, groceries, even a job. But I'd learned to mistrust surface-level reform. Addiction to comfort doesn't vanish overnight, and entitlement doesn't dissolve after a single confrontation. So I watched. I listened. I recorded evidence in my journal. Every action, every word was a new exhibit in the case of whether he would become the man I once believed he could be, or remain the boy who abandoned his mother after surgery. Pia visited often. One evening, as we sipped tea on the porch, she asked the question I'd been avoiding. What if he never changes completely? What if this is as far as he goes? Her words hit like a cross-examining attorney's jab. I swallowed, staring at the fading horizon. Then I'll accept it. But I won't surrender myself to it. His growth, or his failure, won't define me anymore. Pia smiled faintly. That's the verdict I was waiting to hear. Days passed. My son called occasionally, checking in, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with genuine warmth. Yet beneath every call I sensed a tremor. Fear. Not fear of losing me to illness, but fear of losing me as his safety net. One night, he arrived unannounced, again holding a folder. Inside were pay stubs from his new job and a crumpled budget sheet. He laid them on the table like exhibits in his own defense. "See," he said, voice almost pleading. "I'm proving it." I scanned the papers. The evidence was real if fragile. A start, not an end. "It's good," I said carefully. "But the trial isn't over." He frowned. "How long do I have to keep proving myself?" "As long as it takes," I replied, voice firm. "Trust isn't granted. It's earned. You lost it. Now you earn it back. Piece by piece." His eyes darkened with frustration. "You're impossible to please." I leaned forward, steel in my tone. "No. I'm finally refusing to be pleased with crumbs." The silence between us stretched, thick with tension. Then he muttered, "Fine," and stormed out, the door slamming like a gavel once more. But this time, the slam didn't rattle me. It steadied me. Because I knew the truth. Whether he stayed or left, whether he grew or failed, my worth was not on trial anymore. Later that night, I sat in bed with my journal. I wrote, "His evidence is weak, but mine is strong. My evidence is my survival, my strength, my voice." And with that, the jury of my heart leans toward freedom. When I closed the journal, the air in the room felt lighter. Because the verdict I needed most wasn't about him. It was about me. And for once, the ruling was clear. Case in my favor. The morning sun streamed across the kitchen table, scattering gold across my journal. My stitches had finally been cleared by the doctor. My body felt lighter, freer, but my spirit carried the scars of months, even years of imbalance. That day, Pia came with a stack of newspapers. "Community fair this weekend," she said, setting them down. "You should come. Fresh air, good people. Remind yourself life is bigger than these four walls." I hesitated. 4 years, my world had revolved around my son. Every decision, every dollar, every breath was calibrated to his orbit. Now Pia was asking me to step outside that orbit and create my own. "I don't know if I'm ready," I admitted. "You're not," she said bluntly. "But go anyway. That's how readiness is built." I smiled faintly. Pia had become my fiercest advocate, my star witness in this trial of life. The weekend came. I dressed carefully, choosing a bright scarf I hadn't worn in years. At the fair, I inhaled roasted corn, cinnamon sugar, the sharp scent of hay. Children laughed, vendors called, music swelled. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't defined as his mother. I was just me. Then I saw him. My son. Not with friends this time, not drunk on bravado, but standing at a booth, handing out flyers for his new job. His shirt was tucked, his posture awkward but earnest. Our eyes met across the crowd. For a moment, time stilled. He crossed to me, nervous. "Mom, you came." "I did," I said simply. He shifted, holding out a flyer. "This is what I'm doing now. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work." I took the flyer, scanning the text. "Local logistics company. Entry level, but steady." "I'm proud of you," I said carefully. His throat bobbed. "You mean that?" "Yes. But pride isn't the same as trust. Trust takes longer." He nodded slowly, accepting the verdict without argument. Later that evening, back home, I sat with Pia and told her what happened. She grinned. "See? Evidence. Exhibit A. Steady job. Exhibit B. Humility. Exhibit C. He didn't ask you for a thing." I laughed softly. For once. But that night, alone in bed, I wrestled with conflicting emotions. He was changing, or trying to. Yet a part of me still feared the relapse, the return to old patterns. I whispered to the dark, If he fails again, will I survive the disappointment? And the answer rose inside me, steady and clear. Yes. Because now I know I don't need him to survive. The days after the fair carried a quiet rhythm. I cooked small meals, walked longer distances, even joined Pia at her book club. My life was no longer chained to my son's whims. But then came the call. Mom, his voice was tight, rushed. I messed up. My stomach clenched. What happened? I was late to work. Twice. My boss says one more time and I'm out. The old me would have leapt into rescue mode, offered excuses, called in favors, written apology letters on his behalf. But the new me inhaled deeply and spoke like a judge delivering truth. Then don't be late again. He sputtered. That's it? That's your advice? Yes, I said calmly. Because this isn't my trial. It's yours. And you're the only one who can present the evidence. Silence crackled across the line. Finally, he muttered, I thought you'd care more. I do care, I said softly. But caring doesn't mean carrying. The line went dead. That night, guilt gnawed at me. Had I been too harsh? Too cold? But then I remembered the surgery night, the empty silence, the message about kickoff. I remembered crawling to the sink for water while he watched a game. No, I hadn't been harsh. I had been just. 2 days later, he showed up at my door. No folder this time. No excuses. Just him, shoulders hunched. I kept the job, he said quietly. I was on time. Early even. Pride bloomed in my chest, tempered by caution. Good, I said. He shifted awkwardly. I realized something, Mom. That night, the game night, I wasn't just absent. I was cruel. And you had every right to cut me off. But you didn't. You drew a line, and you still let me try again. His eyes glistened. I don't deserve that chance. But I want to earn it. The courtroom inside me stirred. 4 years I'd waited for this testimony. Not from me but from him. An admission not of mistakes, but of cruelty. A recognition of the wound he left. Tears welled in my eyes. Then prove it, I whispered. He nodded firmly. I will. When he left, Pia called. I told her everything. She was silent for a moment, then said, Sounds like the jury is starting to lean. I laughed through tears. Maybe. But the trial's not over. That night, I wrote in my journal. He admitted cruelty. He admitted guilt. Now the case moves towards sentencing. Not from me, but from life itself. And as I closed the journal, I realized something profound. Whether he rose or fell, I would endure. Because for the first time, I was no longer just his mother. I was my own witness. My own judge. My own defense. The weeks rolled forward like slow jury deliberations. Each day added new evidence to the case of my son's redemption. Some days, he showed promise, arriving early, checking in without asking for anything. Other days, he vanished into silence, leaving me to wonder if the old patterns were waiting just around the corner. But I no longer lived on edge. My worth was no longer chained to his choices. I had stitched my strength back together, thread by thread. One Friday evening, the doorbell rang. My son stood there, not with friends, not with demands, just with a small box in his hands. I wanted to give you this, he said quietly, handing it over. Inside was a keychain. Simple. A brass circle etched with 2 words. Thank you. My chest tightened. Why? I whispered. Because I never said it, he replied. Not enough. Maybe not ever. You gave me everything. And I treated you like nothing. That night with the game, I saw it as small. But it was the night I proved myself unworthy. And I don't want to be that son anymore. Tears burned my eyes, but I held his gaze. Words are not enough. I know, he said quickly. That's why I'm not asking for forgiveness tonight. I'm asking for time to keep proving myself. His humility struck deeper than any apology. For the first time, his tone wasn't defensive. It wasn't entitled. It was raw. We sat at the table, the air heavy but honest. I spoke slowly, carefully, like delivering final jury instructions. You abandoned me when I was at my weakest. That fact will never change. But facts don't have to define futures. What matters is what you do now. Evidence. Actions. That's how you earn back trust. He nodded. Then I'll present the evidence. The moment ended without hugs, without fanfare. Just quiet recognition. And that was enough. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, the trial nears its end. The jury waits. The verdict will not be about him alone. It will be about me. Will I choose bitterness, or will I choose freedom? As I closed the book, the answer stirred inside me. I would choose freedom. Because the case of my life was never really about him. It was about me finding my voice after decades of silence. The final stage of healing didn't come with fanfare. It arrived quietly, like a judge slipping into the courtroom after hours to review the last pages of testimony. My stitches were gone. My steps were steady. My body, though scarred, was no longer fragile. But scars don't just live on skin. They live in memory. And mine carried the weight of a son who chose kickoff over care. It was a Saturday afternoon when the knock came. My son stood at the door again. Alone, no friends, no folder. His hands were empty, his eyes restless. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded, though my heart braced itself. He sat at the table, fidgeting. "I don't know where to start," he admitted. "Try the truth," I said simply. He exhaled. "The truth is, I failed you. I abandoned you. I treated you like you didn't matter. And when I look back, I can't believe I did that." His voice cracked. "I was selfish. I thought you'd always be there, no matter what." I stayed silent, letting the confession hang like sworn testimony. He continued, words tumbling. "That night with the game, it wasn't just a mistake. It was cruelty. You asked for help, and I chose a screen. And I can't take it back." Tears welled in his eyes, but for once, they weren't manipulation. They were remorse. I leaned forward, voice steady. "Why now? Why admit this now?" He swallowed hard. "Because I see what I've done. I see the years you carried me while I gave nothing back. And I don't want to be that man anymore." The courtroom of my heart stirred. This wasn't the defense of excuses. It was a guilty plea. And guilty pleas carry weight. Still, I asked the hardest question. "And what happens if you fail again? What if the old habits return?" His eyes lifted, steady. "Then I'll face it. I won't hide behind you anymore. I'll get up, and I'll fix it myself. Because I don't want you carrying me anymore." For a long moment, we sat in silence, the air heavy with truth. Finally, I nodded. That's what I needed to hear. Not promises. Not excuses. Just the truth. His lips trembled. "Does this mean you forgive me?" I chose my words carefully. Forgiveness is not a verdict I give in a single day. It's evidence collected over time. What I can say is this. I see you trying. And that matters. He nodded, relief flickering. Then I'll keep proving it. When he left that evening, I closed the door gently. Not with bitterness but with calm. Later, on the porch with Pia, I told her everything. She sipped her tea, eyes twinkling. "So, what's the ruling, Judge?" I smiled faintly. "The ruling is still pending. But the jury of my heart sees progress. And that for now is enough." That night, I wrote in my journal. Parties have presented closing arguments. Jury deliberates. Verdict soon. And for the first time, I felt ready. Not for his answer, but for mine. The last chapter came not with conflict, but with clarity. It was evening. The sky blushed with the last traces of sunlight. My son came once more. Not to ask, not to confess, but simply to sit. We shared tea in silence, and for the first time in years, the silence wasn't heavy. It was human. After a while he spoke. "Mom, I don't know if I'll ever erase what I did. But I want you to know, I'll never forget it. And I'll never repeat it." I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't the boy I raised, nor the careless man who left me crawling for water. He was something in between, flawed, uncertain, but trying. And I realized then, the verdict wasn't about him. It was about me. I placed my cup down, my voice steady as a gavel. "I release you from my silence. I release myself from my chains. I will not live defined by the night you failed me. I will live defined by the strength I found after." His eyes brimmed, but I continued. Whether you rise or fall, my life is mine. My peace is mine. My worth is mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, "Thank you." I smiled softly. The case is closed. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. Not because he was redeemed but because I was free. And when sleep claimed me, it wasn't with fear or bitterness. It was with peace. The trial of my heart had ended. Verdict: freedom.